Well, good afternoon, everybody. Or that's not good afternoon, it's still good morning, but it'll be afternoon here very, very shortly on Eastern Standard Time. It's the old soldier coming at you from Robeson County, North Carolina. A little dark this morning to try and do one on the drive to work. And yesterday I had one done, but before I decided to publish it, I looked at it and really realized I was all over the page and it wasn't very coherent. And I thought if somebody saw that video, they'd have thought I was on dope or something. I was just bouncing all over the place on the subject matter. I don't like to do that. But today is Friday, so we're gonna have a little fun on Fun Fridays. The weather here this morning was rather cool. Well, I'll just say it was cold, but it felt great. I was able to get out and get a good deep breath of fresh, clean, crisp air because it rained last night. Kind of washed all the nastiness out of the air, if just for a moment. But even now, it's still kind of cool outside, which is good. It means things are finally starting to cool off. I think here in Robeson County, Sunday night, they're calling for a low of 31. Like, whew, that's early in the year to be below freezing, but this cold front's blowing in. So, but that being said, you've got the fall festivities that are starting to take place all over the nation. When I was a kid, growing up in Chattanooga, they had what was called the, if I remember correctly, the Fall Color Cruise, or the Fall Color Festival. They called it a cruise, but it wasn't, you didn't get on a boat. Well, you could take a boat on the Tennessee River. It'd take you back up through the mountains and things like that, where the Tennessee River runs, and you could see the things change. But they had a driving route too, that each weekend there was something you could go to. And my mama, she was big into arts and crafts. These events had a lot of these things, and so we would go and plunder and see the various different things. Big thing me and my brother always like to get, if anybody's ever seen them, and I think you can still get them in places like Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge and Helen, Georgia, little rubber band guns. You put a rubber band on it and you pull the trigger and it launches the rubber band. I used to like getting those because I'd irritate the crap out of my brother with one. But it'd be about somebody had a wood shop and make them. I think that somebody sold a generic design for people to do it. But we had fun doing stuff like that. It was fun to go to the different vendors there because some people would be making homemade funnel cakes. Oh my goodness, I miss homemade funnel cakes with some powdered sugar. Good golly, Miss Molly, those things are good. Some place would do homemade fried pork rinds or pork skins. Ooh, that's another one, folks, to get you. They are delicious. Me and my dad, we could polish off a bag by ourselves. But you had the other. There would be people making quilts and crocheted blankets and just all kinds of stuff. And it was all geared towards, mountain life. It was a lot of fun. I just remember looking back at it, and we would drive and and also you get to see the leaves change and the different colors and that scenic vista of the oranges and the reds and the yellows and these various hues and things of that nature. Just absolutely breathtaking and gorgeous. And not every place in the United States has that when fall arrives, but they have their version of it, if I guess you would say. And I'd like to hear from some of the viewers that live out west in places like Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, California, what fall time is like for where you're at in the parts of the states that you live in. Because not everywhere is like Robeson County, North Carolina, where, you've got lush green scenery everywhere. But I know that there's splendor and beauty in every part of this country. When I was a child, my mama had a sister that lived in Seattle, Washington for many, many years. And this time we were living in Atlanta. My dad worked at Fort McPherson as a government civilian, and we used to have a camper that we pulled for our vacations a lot. Well, long story short, Mama wanted to go see her sister who lived in Seattle, Washington. My dad, being my dad, was going to see to it that his wife, the woman he loved, would get her wish. So he went to the local credit union on Fort McPherson and pulled a loan to pay for the vacation. When we hooked up, I think at the time we had the Midas. It was a Midas 28-foot camper. We hooked it up, and we went from Atlanta, Georgia to Seattle, Washington and back over the course of that summer. Daddy had his atlas. It's how we navigated across country. For young folks, an atlas, that's a paper book full of maps. And you buy them for the geographic region of where you're at. We had one for the United States. I'm not trying to be facetious here, folks, but I had a young person ask me one time, what's an atlas? And I had to sit him down and explain to him what an atlas was and what it did. But anyway, Daddy had his atlas, and he had also several smaller maps for each state we were going through. Soon we'd get in the state, he'd stop and buy a map at a gas station. Because back then, gas stations had maps. You went in, you bought the map. You kept it in your glove compartment, wherever, you know. Dad always kept them with the atlas. And he would look and verify his routes, and off we would go. There's a couple of times I remember I had to pull the map out, had to make sure, you know, we're right on course. And we'd get the trucking. Now, mind you, this was during the OPEC crisis, where OPEC was strangling the United States on oil prices. And I remember gas going up extreme. It had gone from like 20 cents a gallon to 45 to 50 cents a gallon, like overnight. I can remember we were driving, you know, and Dad looked at me and said, "Now, son," and here's the other thing. My brother and I and my mom, we all had to rotate who sat up front with Dad, because, you know, they wanted each one of us boys to be able to sit up front and see a portion of the country from the front. Normally we rode in the back, and we had 2 lounge chairs in the back of the truck, and we had sleeping bags and blankets for when Mom and Dad were driving. We'd go to sleep, me and my brother, but we would rotate. And I remember Dad looking and telling me, "Now, son, help Daddy find a gas station for 35 cents a gallon. Look out for one for 35 cents a gallon." And I'd point him out, or whatever it was. It might have been 40 cents a gallon, whatever the case may be. But when we got ready to go on this trip, he went and bought 2 5-gallon fuel cans from the Army surplus store. And strapped those to the back of the camper. And I can remember pulling off the side of the road and putting the nozzle on there and putting 5 gallons in the truck, and knowing that that'd get him down to the next exit where he might find gas just 2 or 3 cents cheaper. But folks, I'll tell you this. In the course of that summer, as a young boy, I'm about to get a little emotional here because that trip still sticks in my mind. I saw more of this great nation than most people will ever see in a lifetime. And during that time, I got to see things like the Grand Canyon, the redwood forest, the petrified forest, the painted desert. I got to go to the top of the Seattle Space Needle and look out at the scenic vista from there, looking at Mount Rainier way off in the distance. Got to go to a salmon fish cannery and watch them catch the fish live out of the Columbia, I think it was the Columbia River, and bring them into the plant. Got to see a Cardinals game in St. Louis. That was the evening my daddy got me Stan Musial's autograph on a baseball cap. baseball, and I like to stand like Stan Musial. If you don't know anything about him, you need to look him up. He had a particular stance when he stood and batted. This man could hit a ball. My daddy and my brother had gone to the concession stand and bought a couple hats, and the reason was he saw where Stan Musial was coming back through, and he wanted to make sure, because me and Mama were sitting in the seats snacking, and Dad wanted to make sure me and my brother had something to remember that event by. I got to see the Pacific Ocean. We drove by Graceland on the way home. We stayed the night in Las Vegas. Got to swim in the Great Salt Lake in Utah. Went and saw the organ play at the Great Tabernacle in Salt Lake City. Dad took an extra day to make sure that we got to spend an extra day in Salt Lake City because there was just so much there to see and do. Had my 8th birthday in North California. We stayed at a campground right near the Redwood Forest. Got to go to a park where they had the trunk of one of those carved out where a car could pass through. Got to drive through Wyoming, Colorado, Idaho and Oregon, California. New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada. We came through the panhandle of Texas. I could go on and on, folks. Why am I sharing this with you on Fun Friday? Because that was a fun trip. It's one that I will never, ever, ever in my life forget. I guess the other part of this too is don't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone, ladies and gentlemen, and boys and girls, and go someplace and do things. I say that to say this, that even with all the BS that's going on in our nation right now, we are still a beautiful nation. There are still things that if you only ever see it once in a lifetime, it will be well worth the memories that you generate from that. I highly encourage each and every one of you, even if it's just a trip to your local library, go to your local library, get a hard-covered book on geography and learn about a new place. I love geography. It ties hand in hand with history, which I also love. There's a lot that can be learned by studying geography and history. And do it for yourselves, but your family as well. If you've got children, especially if they're young, now's the time to start sharing these things with them. When mine were young, we didn't get to go all over the place, but my kids did get to Disney World once. When we lived in Virginia, when I was an Army recruiter, 3 years of my life I'll never get back, but the limited time that I did have off during those years, we tried to take the children places in Virginia. There was one summer we went and spent the entire, we spent a week on the Virginia Peninsula. And we went to Virginia Beach, Norfolk, and Suffolk, and Jamestown, and Williamsburg. Just exploring and seeing the various things to be seen there. Okay. Also, during that time, I had an opportunity. I had a battalion commander that was big into doing Revolutionary War and Civil War reenacting, and he knew that I was. He knew that I loved military history. So the 140th anniversary of Antietam was coming up during this time. And he ordered my commander to go and said, by the way, you're taking Sergeant Linebarger with you. That's non-optional. Because he knew I loved military history. He knew that I would enjoy it. And he knew my children would get something out of it. So we got to go. And for a week, and here's the thing, I was working. We got to go and set up a stand or a display stand in a tent with other vendors and just hand out literature on why people, talk to young people about joining the Army. He didn't really expect us to generate any applicants because we were really outside of our company in actual battalion area. But it was a way to promote the Army. But we don't have to sit in that booth for a couple hours each day, and then we were free to go and enjoy all the other things that were going on. So we'd go and watch the reenactments that were going on. Each day they had a different portion of the battle they reenacted. And we got to go and see all this. We got to go and watch and do things. It was just awesome. Got to see my first NASCAR race when I was on recruiting duty. As far as a live race. But we tried to do things that we can. Even if it's just doing one thing. Just try and do it. Something will build that memory with the children. But anyway, folks, fun Friday. I just thought I'd share that with you. Is that something that's near and dear to my heart, is going out and doing things like that and learning. I'd encourage you to do so as well. But with that being said, charities, I'd ask you to help out. ThoughtsOfAnOldSoldier.org, pin up for vets and ballot for veterans. Help them out, because without your help, they can't do what they do, and they do a great thing for our veterans, their families, our first responders, and their families as well. Vendors, I'd ask you to support Money Quick Pawn, Rayford Road. If you live in my part of North Carolina, that's where I go to for all my firearms and ammunition needs. Robert's Custom Woodworks and Unsung Patriot, check them out. And likewise, if you want to help me out, I've got a Patreon link with a membership there. If you want to support the channel, you can join that. What I'm going to plan to do with that, if I get enough people to join my Patreon, is use that to purchase military items and uniforms to do reviews on and history lessons on. And then I think what I'll do, if I get enough patronage, at the end of the month, I'll do a giveaway of those items. But in order to do that, I need people to support me on Patreon. So there's a link in my description somewhere. Just check it out. Likewise, I've got my t-shirts and my books. All the links are down below. If you haven't got your t-shirts yet, go check them out. I'm sure I've got a size ready for you and in a color you'd like. So go down and check those out too if you could. But until tomorrow, God bless, take care, and enjoy the weather as it changes, folks. But until tomorrow, this is your old friend, the Old Soldier.